Yeah.
I have all your loving letters and know how you long to be of service to me. You have been and will be still more, my dear boy. Why should you feel yourself unworthy and that I am pulling on with you and so on? For I love you as you are.
Underlined as you are. That's the greatness, you see. That's who he is.
You have a nice, frank, receptive heart that can and does love, in spite of the constant reverses, as you say, from the head. And that is all I want. When one completely depends on me and leaves things to me as you have.
See? That's right, that's important. When one
completely depends on me and leaves things to me as you have, I see that the reverses from the head gradually give way. I will order everything for the best as you desire. The way you feel your own weaknesses opens your way and leads you to rise above them. They all have to come out once, and the sooner the better.
the more you realize it, then you can write about it.
What does it say? They all have to come out at once?
No, they all have to come out once.
I mean to say, with some time or another, it's an Indian phrase. At least sometime, once, it has to come out.
Right. No, I thought when I read it once before, I thought it said it's once.
Nay.
Sooner or later.
Sooner or later, that's right. Once it has to come out.
It is because
and the sooner the better.
Yeah.
It is because.
It is because of this that you feel as you do. But you, dear Tod, needn't at all worry, for it is all for the better. Things are being stirred up, and they are all brought out to prepare you for the greater future that is to be yours. Love me more, and that will take care of other things, consuming all in its flame, till nothing but pure love divine remains. That is all I want you to do, more and more, all my love.
To love him, and he takes care of it all.
So that's how he wants us to live. You see, that a very good way, Mani, of bringing out this letter today. This is how he wants us to live. It's the easiest way.
But see, that's the difference between belief and faith.
What is it now? You have confused me again.
No, it's like one thing believing that that's possible. You see, that's like, you do believe that, like you believe that rug is there.
Yeah.
Because you see it. But
faith?
But faith is different. Faith is, how do you even explain? Faith is the heart knowing, or faith is that...
Faith is, as Baba says, the word square. You not only say yes, Baba, but you know it's square.
Yeah.
No, that's true. Who was that?
Walk off the edge.
In the daytime with the land.
Kalyan or Kabir.
We have, in his compassion, so many, I wouldn't say examples, but so many, that it has been done. It has been done, so it's possible. And we have these things to be
One day, you
talk
see,
about,
Kabir, the perfect master, had his disciple. Do you all know the story of Kalyan?
No. They only know a station called Kalyan. They don't even know there's a great...
So there was a perfect master near Benares by name Kabir. Kabir you all must have heard.
Yeah,
He's a famous person here. The famous perfect master. Kabir,
Yeah.
the poet. Yeah. So he was the perfect master of his time. He had many disciples. One of them was Kalyan. So he was very obedient and all that. One day he said, in order to just set an example to others about his obedience, you see. Yeah, there were others, you see, because Kabir loved Kalyan very much and all that. So he said to Kalyan, he said to others, you see, oh, it was this time, noontime, bright sunshine. He says, what has happened today? It has turned dark over here and I can't see, because he was a weaver. The loom. So don't you think it's dark? So some said yes, some said yeah. Because most probably because they felt that there was sun there. Others felt that there was sun. But to Kalyan, as soon as Kabir said that it was dark, he did feel the darkness. He couldn't see. He just groped, you see, and went to the lamp, to the place where the lamp was. He lit the lamp and brought it, and then you started working. So that's how it is. It's not just throwing words in air. So that's how it is. It's not just throwing words in air, you see, one has to become that. He had faith, total faith that was darkness now.
And then the others understood more why Kabir loved Kalyan more and spoke of his obedience. And the others said, well, we obey too, so where's the difference? And when this incident was brought out, they said yes because the master was saying that you shouldn't say yes, but they knew it was sunshine and it was dark. It was Kalyan, it became a fact because that is what his master said. So lighting the name.
It's like obeying, Baba asks us to go out in the city naked, you see, and beg for food. So what happens is that we obey him. So there is somebody who just goes out, you see, drops his clothes and walks out to go out begging. The other says, Baba has told me to go out begging naked in the street. So why should I become naked here? I'll go and find a better spot there in the street and then go naked. So the other person goes to this town, you see, fully dressed and all that, and then he looks here and there, you see, and drops his clothes, and then he just goes out 2-3 houses being embarrassed, you see, and begs for food. Then there is another person, you see, he says, all believe in Baba, all want to obey Baba. So then the third person gets into his mind, he says, but Baba has said that you go out naked, you go out and beg in the streets naked. So, but he has never told me the time. The best time for me to become naked and beg is night time when people won't be able to see me a lot, you see. So I will bid my time and go after sunset. So he goes. All three have obeyed. All three have obeyed him. Now which would you call, which obedience would please him? Who has never given thought to all these things, who never analyzes these things, you see. You follow what I say? We want to love him, we want to obey him, but our case is like this all the time. He doesn't give a thought to all these things, pros and cons, and wants to find loophole or this or that, or wants to feel or do exactly as he would want it, the way he would want it. Baba says, naked, begging, that's all. That clicks only. The nakedness and begging in the streets. Finish. So what we do is we sit, you see, and ponder over it. This he did, or that he did, or what he did, and all that. All do the same thing. They all, but which is the obedience that would please him? Now we know. Yeah. That's also, there is another good story, you know. These are the things told to us by Baba about this. This was particularly, this figure was given to us by Baba. 3 types of people who went out begging when he wanted them to beg naked in the streets. So there's another story about a person, you see, who was a perfect master, who was a favorite. A disciple was a favorite of a perfect master, and the others thought that, well, all the love that has been bestowed by the master upon this boy, you see, is just worthless because he's so new and he's so dumb and all that. So, naturally, the perfect master, you see, wanted to dispel all those doubts and thoughts from his own ones because he loved them all equally. One day, the master said that, look here boys, I have got a very serious ailment, physical ailment. And, you see, I would like you, he calls each one to him, not all in a group. I would like you see, that I know that you will keep a secret, and I would like you to bring me the blood of a dove. Here is the dove, you take it and kill it somewhere outside, not here, because people might wonder as to why the master kills an innocent bird, and I want the blood of it. If I take it, I'll be all right. Will you do that? He says, yes, I'll do it. Kill it and bring it. But one thing, nobody should know, nobody should see it. Nobody should see this act. He says, I will go and do it somewhere else. So, he tells each one, and then he catches hold of the dumb person who had just come 3 or 4 years back, you see, into this ashram and all that, on whom people thought, or the disciples thought, that Master poured his love there too. He was also told. So he also carries that. And each one believes and thinks that each one is given the special job without the knowledge of the other. So each one completely tries to be quiet, you see, and each on his own goes out. Each one comes to the Master with the blood, you see. And the Master is happy and just pleased and all that. And of course, each one thinks, you see, that he has pleased the Master, carried out the order and all that. This youngster did not turn up for days together, that dumb person, you see. And the Master starts inquiring what has happened to him. And then Master divulges the secret that to each one of you I have told the same thing, and you have brought it. Without the others knowing anything. But what has happened to him? So eventually after a week he turns up, very shy and not knowing what to do, and he brings the live bird. So the Master says, well, what happened to you? Where did you go? So he says, I tried to carry out your command, but in the very act of carrying out your command, I couldn't do anything. He says, why? Couldn't you find any place anywhere where none would see? He says, yes, there were many, but the bird itself saw me every time. So I couldn't do it. So Master says, he's not dumb, he's the wise one over here. So that's how it is. The Master knows our words. Yeah.
I want to ask you one more thing.
She is waiting for the story. Acha. Ask
if you want to answer this later.
Later means another sword hanging all the time on my head.
Well,
I may not be able to live that long.
And you don't want to take another birth.
Yeah.
That's why I want to ask it, because it's the sword on my head, right?
All right. What is it?
Everything we've talked about all comes down to, as you read that letter, it all comes down to one thing, and that was talking about and trying to...
As you are. I love you as you are.
And we must try to love him. And we must love him. So that's the answer. You love me.
Yeah.
Now, the big question is...
How to love, Baba? Yeah.
You know, I mean, like, you can be, try to love, but then...
Baba was once put this question by a multitude of people, you see. But how to love you? So from the stage, Baba gestured and says, does anybody teach any individual to love his own wife or the person with whom he has fallen in love? He just begins to love, he falls in love. So then Baba again, of course, that was his answer he had given, and then he started explaining. You see. When you fall in love with a woman, does the woman teach you as to how you should love her? You begin to love, isn't it? Huh?
Yes.
Yeah, you begin to love. Nobody wants to teach you how you wouldn't want to even be taught how to love your beloved. Would you want to? You wouldn't talk to the person who would want to teach you how to love that beloved. Yes, okay. Like that. So why do you ask Baba? Baba says, I am the beloved of all, and why do you want me to tell you how you should love me? Can't you love me? So then Baba, through again compassion, through his own love, to satisfy our mental gymnastics, you see, and all these convulsions that we have, he tells us that in the world you fall in love with a person by seeing the person at first sight. And then you become restless. And then you start thinking of the person. And then you remember the person. That is the worldly love. The worldly way of falling in love. But to fall in love with me is diametrically opposite to it. First, you have to think of me. Remember me. Then become restless. Become so restless that I on my own appear there, and then you see me as I really am, and then you fall in love. That's my grace. That's my gift of love to you. So you have to begin now to think of him. Remember him constantly. The more you think of him, the better it is. The better chances of his giving you the gift of his love. You have to win the gift.
Do you remember somewhere Baba saying that falling in love is a misnomer? I remember, because you don't fall in love with God. Do you remember that quote?
No, I don't remember. What is it? Tell us.
I don't remember.
Never mind the gist of it. What is it?
I don't remember the gist, but I think it was something to the fact that you can't fall in love.
Yeah.
It's the opposite of not falling.
Yeah.
Right.
It's the gift. It's gift. When you rise above duality and just constantly become restless, you see, for him, for a sight of him, then he gives his sight, his beauty to you, and that with that is his gift of love. Then you begin to fall in love with him. That's the real loving at the sixth plane. Yeah. But that doesn't mean that you just wait for that. Begin to now remember him. Think of him as much as possible. And it's not too far. Sixth plane is not too far from here. The distance between here and New York is further away than the sixth plane. It's all within us. That's what he says. What story should we say now? His story, yeah. He had told us this. Yeah, he said, one day, naturally, after years with him, we used to have, our minds would just say that we have passed so many years in his company, so many things have happened. Years have been with him in his company, so what? The mind would say. Have we wasted our youth? Have we wasted our manhood? What has happened to us? Is it good? Was it good in the first place? So, one day Baba told us this story. So, there was a certain king. There was a king of a certain place, and he was ruling over his subjects, and he was kind and loving, and everything was perfect in his kingdom. His subjects loved him and all that. All of a sudden, this king lost the balance of mind, and we find him roaming on the streets of his own kingdom. And so, what happened is that people started wondering what had happened to him. Is he gone crazy? What had happened to him? So ministers started wondering. They followed him, and he was just wandering on the street, not knowing where he was and what he was eating. A day passed, a week passed, a month passed. The ministers tried to get him back to the palace. Nothing doing. So what happened is that they gave up all hopes. His younger brother was installed king. The wife of the younger brother became the queen. And this man, the real king, was wandering on the streets. People took him to be mad now. And then it so happened that this newly appointed king and his wife, they were ruling over the subjects very well, and everything was pleasant. But the king had no love for his elder brother, who had given up the kingdom, whereas the queen had a soft heart for the man. So one day, she would always think of him. She would always want the real king to be back in the palace and to be there. Even though if he wanted to go on the streets, he can go from the palace. Why can't he have his shelter in his own palace and all that? But the king didn't like it because it wouldn't create healthy psychology, so to say. So he was allowed to wander on the streets, much against the wish of the new queen. One day the queen finds this king who had given up his kingdom on a beach, and he was there just playing with the sand as any children would play with the sand on a beach, on a seashore. The queen with her maiden, they were having a morning stroll, passing by. All of a sudden she comes across this man. Oh, says, his name was Bahlul. So says, Bahlul, do you remember me? Says, yes. You are the queen now. So says, well, where are you going? He says, I'm going for a walk. So what are you doing, Bahlul? Well, I am building castles in heaven, for those who need them. So he says, you're building castles in heaven for those who need them? I will need them very sure. I'm sure of it very soon. He says, well, I don't know. He says, can you build it for me? He says, yes, I will. But you'll have to pay the price for it. He says, I will pay the price. What's the price that you'll want? He says, give that necklace that is around your neck. So it was a necklace of precious stones, very costly, So she, like a child, she just took out the necklace and gave it to the madman, Bahlul. So Bahlul looked at it and he laughed at it and he enjoyed the colors and all that. And he tore the necklace. And he looked at one of the gems and threw it in the sea, another there and there and there. It was all destroyed, thrown in the sea. So then what happened? He threw the whole necklace, all the precious stones, the whole necklace was destroyed, and threw the stones in the sea. And he laughed at her and says, go back. A castle for you is built in heaven. And she giggled and her maiden giggled and all that and looked at him back and all that with love. And they left, knowing that he's a madman after all. But a kind-hearted person, good person. After all, he was her husband's brother. He was the rightful king, too. Well, they left the place. She went back to the palace. A day or two passed by. One day, the king looked at her and says, well, you didn't like the necklace that I got out for you? So she remembered that. She said, of course I liked it. She said, where is it? You have replaced it? You have put it back in the treasury? He says, no. Where is it then? You lost it? He says, no, I gave it to Bahlul. To Bahlul? That madman? What did he do with it? She says, so she narrates the whole story. So that he asked me as the price for it, for building a castle in heaven for me. And then what did he do? She says, he tore the necklace and threw the stones in the sea. Didn't you know that he was mad? Do you know that this doesn't belong to you personally? It was an heirloom, it is the treasuries. What will you answer to the subjects? It's not your personal jewelry. And there was a lot of verbal exchange between the husband and the wife, that is the king and the queen. And they were both upset. And they didn't talk with each other for some days. Days passed by. And then, one night, the king goes through a nightmare. It's a horrible nightmare. And he starts shrieking and shouting and howling and all that, and the wife wakes up. Says, what's the matter? He gets up, all drenched in perspiration and trembling with fright. He says, it was a horrible experience I had. So what is the experience that you had? Why were you shouting? You're the king of the whole kingdom.
Oh, it's terrible. After all, what's being a king? She said, what's happened? What happened? She says, well, I found myself dead, and after having died, I was elected to enter the gates of heaven. And then I was conducted there, and while I was going through the streets of heaven, I tried to find a place to rest. And there were many big castles and all sorts of things there and all that. And it so happened that there was no place for me being the king. There were so many. I saw my subjects having castles for themselves. And then the worst thing was that I saw you looking out of a window, and I got very happy that I thought that that was my place. And I tried to enter the castle, and you shouted from there that each on his own. This belongs to me, it's mine. And that's where I started howling and shouting that there is none here. All my subjects are having there. Most of my subjects whom I knew, who were living in hovels, you see, they have the castles in heaven. You being my wife, you have your own castle, and I don't have it. So that frightened me. It was a horrifying experience. So she tells him now, reminds him, saying, look, I have been constantly telling you that your brother is no madman. You remember the day that we had that fight over the building castle in heaven and all that? There is something to do with you, those impressions you have gathered now, and these impressions are important for you. So try to invite your brother and talk to him nicely, lovingly, and do something. He is no madman to leave the kingdom like that overnight. There must be something behind it. This is all right, Colin. So she was very happy. Her dream is to be fulfilled now. So the man is invited, From the streets he is called with all great honor and all that. So he enters to the gates of the palace there. The queen receives him and sends him out for a good scrub, and a bath and change of dress and all that. He was all in filthy rags and all that. So he's now fully dressed and is made to sit in the main hall there. And facing him was his brother. He says, Bahlul, do you recognize me? He says, of course, you are my brother. You have the reins of the kingdom that I left behind. He says, what do you want? Why did you invite me here? He says, you remember the day when my wife went out for a stroll there, walked with her maidens and met you there at the beach there? Oh yes, I was building castles in heaven for people who wanted them. So what do you want? What is it? Why do you invite me just to ask that? He says, no. He says, look here, I am seriously thinking about having a castle for me in heaven. Well, you can have it too. Can you build it for me? He says, of course I can build it for you. Why can't I? But you'll have to pay the price for it. So he says, of course I'm prepared to pay the price. And he took out a necklace of pearls. The kings were wearing those. Now men don't wear jewelry, Those were the days when the royalty used to wear all those jewels. So he took out a necklace. So he looked at it and laughed and says, well, you give this? This is the price for a castle in heaven for you, for the king. It's too little a price. Another pearl string, another string of pearls, gems and all that. No, this is from my wife. You asked just a necklace, and now I am bestowing upon you all the jewels that I am wearing at this moment. I said, well, even if you were to part with your not half kingdom, the whole kingdom, it would be too little for it. He says, why is it so? It's so simple. When I told your wife about it, she didn't know the worth of a castle in heaven. But now, you know the worth, why you want to offer these jewels, for the castle in heaven. You know the worth of your castle in heaven. So, when you know the worth of it, you'll have to pay the full price of it. And the price of it is not only your complete kingdom, but your own self. Even that would be too little. So Baba then said to us, that this is the moment, these are the years when you know not with whom you are. A little effort on your part here and there, a little sacrifice, a little offering here and there is enough for you to be by my side and to serve me. But when the world will come to know of me, and they would want to give up their everything to me, for my cause, it will be too little an offering for that. Because they will know the worth. Now in your ignorance, now just you take me as I am, when I say so. It's not. But when the world will come to know about it, then no amount of sacrifice will equal to what they want. So that's the story he had told us. You know, Rabia is a famous personality amongst the Sufi masters and teachers, and she is famous for her beauty and her purity. She was living in Basra. And her fame reached far and wide from that place, and those who have embraced Sufism and all that, they are very close to Rabia, and this is a part of her life, the story. Once, will that be all right, or we'll stop for the music? Is it all right for this?
I think so.
So, shut the door, Dharam.
I know, I'm fine.
Was it through the window? Huh?
It's air conditioning.
So she was very famous for her beauty and for her piety, as I told you. She lived in Basra, this Rabia. And it so happened once that a certain person from Persia, who was a businessman, young, handsome, rich, wanted to take a vacation, and he left the place, his place, and he started going out from one place to another in his own country, and then he crossed his country and went to Iraq and other neighboring countries. Eventually, of course, he was in Basra when the story begins. So he comes to Basra, and as he was wont to do, his habit was to inquire from the people of the new cities that he would visit, what was worth seeing there, because he was on a vacation. So people would say that, well, there are parks and there are these buildings and there are good lakes or rivers and this and that and so on. So nothing would satisfy him, because there were parks and there were good gardens and there were buildings and there were palaces and paintings and sculptures in Iran too, in Persia, from where he came. So he would just scoff at these people's concept of beauty and worth sightseeing places and all that. When he came to Basra, he was told that besides all this, they had great beauty in their own city. So he said, well, we have beauty in Persia too. So what do you mean by beauty? So the beauty of art and all that? Says, no, beauty of creation, that is, a very beautiful woman is over here. She is the most beautiful woman on earth. He says, but how do you happen to know that? Because amongst Islamic countries, women are not supposed to expose their face. He said, well, we have seen her beauty, and she is considered to be the most beautiful woman by us, you see. So, but how do you happen to see her? He said, why can't we see her? Anybody who pays the price for it sees the woman. So what do you mean by it? Where does she live? So, she lives in a brothel. Brothel? How is it possible? She says, well, that's her way of life. She lives there. She is one of the group there. You know what brothel is?
No.
You don't know?
No.
The place where prostitutes live.
Oh.
She said, how is it possible? She says, well, wherever he went, people spoke of her beauty, and so he was intrigued. He wanted to find out. He wanted to see. He was young, handsome, very rich and all that. People said that you'll have to pay the price for it. So he's willing to do so, but he had never paid a visit to a brothel. It was against his nature. He was a man of good standing and society and all that. So in spite of it, curiosity prevailed upon him and he decided to go. So he took the address and he went. When he went there, naturally the manager, the matron as it is called, she said, what do you want? He says, well, I'd like to pass the night with that woman who is known as Rabia, who is considered to be very beautiful. Can I do so? He says, of course, if you pay for it. Well, can you afford to? He says, well, what do you want? Some exorbitant price was asked, and he paid, and he went. He was put in the chamber. So when he went there, there was all vacant, nothing was there, you see it. And when he stepped in a little ante-room there, she was found, he saw a woman of great beauty there, all absorbed in prayers. And when he just gaped at her first, and he was so absorbed, you see it, seeing her beauty, he just lost himself, and he was there. And when he was there like that for an hour or so, all his passions were subdued. And he just began to adore her beauty. After an interval, she got out from her prayers and excused herself and begged his pardon for keeping a visitor waiting like that, because it was contrary to the code of the institution. And she called a maiden and asked her to serve food and drinks and all that, and she joined at the dinner. So while taking dinner, she inquired as to how he had come here, whether he belonged to this place or whether he belonged to some other place. Eventually he started telling about his adventures and all that, and then he said, how beautiful you are. So she says, do you call this beauty? And then she just took him round, making him think over the subject of beauty and the beauty that's masked, you see. And he said, if you were to see the beauty that is unmasked, this mask rots, and then it so happens that you do not even want to just stand there looking at when the mask falls or rots. You don't want to stand there, the stink that it creates, the awesome sight that is there, you see, you just like to forget about it all. But the beauty that when it becomes unveiled, and the true beauty, and she went on chatting and talking about the beauty of creation, the beauty of which is nothing but the reflection of the Creator, which is beauty personified, and this and that and so forth. It took long hours, and she kept him absorbed with all this talk, and he had fallen in love with this beauty, and he just adored her and just gazed at her and listened to her. And it was early hours of the morning, it was time for him to leave now, the institution. So she said, now it's time for you to leave. So he said that, what can I do for you? How can I repay you for all these things? I'll lay down my life for you. He says, I just want one promise from you, that's all. He says, what promise? My life is ready for you. And she asked him, well, when he left this place, he shouldn't tell anybody of what transpired in the night. Otherwise that would spoil the whole show. Then he realized, you see, that many people of the town who had visited her, where all have been told about the real beauty, whereas they had gone for the carnal beauty. So that's how he had found a great change in the citizens of that particular city. And he laughed and says, "That's the trick you play upon the hearts of the people?" He says, "Yes." So she used her beauty in order to create a longing for the eternal beauty, which is God. She's famous for it. And then she became very well known, and Baba told us later on that this is how she lived, and in this incarnation she was Baba Jan. You heard of Baba Jan?
What's Baba?
Beauty. I said Rabia was Baba Jan. It was Rabia who came as Baba Jan this time, and she became perfect and emancipated. Yeah. Now there is another story. This story of the prostitute, you see, or the brothel, reminds me of another story that I heard. It is about a certain perfect master who was in the habit of going from place to place and wandering and taking with him a few disciples in turns. So one day it so happened, and his habit was that he would never take rest or go inside the city. He would encamp himself on the outskirts of the city and be there. And then people would flock around him for his darshan and all that. And he would see them, discourse with them, he would give them some messages and good words of counsel and all that. Before sunset, he would signal to them to just disperse. That was the habit of this perfect master. But when he asked the others to leave, there was one family whom he always would want to sit down near him. And that family would bring food for him and for the disciples and all that. And then he would take the food happily and chat with them and joke with them and all that. The family grew up in his closeness whenever he would come to that town. And the family loved him and he loved the family and all that. In the family there was one daughter. She grew up. After years, naturally, she became of age now. She should get married. So the parents were anxious. So once the turn came when the perfect master paid a visit to that township, so the parents brought up this subject. Master, this little girl that was playing on your lap there, now she's grown up. It's time for her to get married. So the master said, "Perfect, it's good. Find a suitable husband for her. I'll bless the husband. Get her married. She's after all my daughter. Well, I'm very happy." So next time when he came, they fixed the wedding on the date. You see that he was supposed to be present there on the outskirts of that town, and the wedding took place. And then in the evening, all that retinue went there for his darshan. The girl who got married, the newly found husband for the girl, the parents, and the other family all went there. There was a crowd of people as usual around him. And then he made them sit. And then they were given darshan and the message and the discourse and all that. It was time now for them to disperse because of sunset. So they were sent back, and this family was told to be there. So they sat and chatted and talked and all that. The food was brought there, and especially it was a feast day because of the wedding that had taken place. So well, after the feast was over and all that, there was a crowd of people as usual around him. And then he made them sit. And then they were given darshan and the message and the discourse and all that. It was time now for them to disperse because of sunset. So they were sent back, and this family was told to be there. So they sat and chatted and talked and all that. The food was brought there, and especially it was a feast day because of the wedding that had taken place. So well, after the feast was over and all that,